So, have you ever been in one of those meetings where everyone is just, popping champagne, celebrating a totally flawless plan?
Oh, yeah. The big victory lap meeting.
Exactly. But then there's that one person in the corner who just isn't clapping. They're uh, they're staring at the whiteboard, eyebrows completely knit together, looking like they just smelled something burning.
I know exactly the look you mean. It's the look of someone who sees the cliff edge while everyone else is just, admiring the view.
Right. And usually the whole room just groans. It's like, oh, great, here goes Alex again, finding problems where there literally aren't any. But then
3 months later.
3 months later, yeah, the project crashes exactly how Alex said it would. And Alex is just sitting there, not even happy about being right, just exhausted.
It's an incredibly heavy burden to carry. But, in the system we're exploring today, that person isn't just a pessimist. They're actually a high-functioning, highly sophisticated radar system.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive, everyone. Today we are taking a really serious look under the hood of human behavior. And we're using the Max Energy ME80 personality system to do it.
Which is key to point out right up front. Because we aren't just talking about personality in the casual sense of, are you an introvert or an extrovert?
Right, it's deeper than that.
Much deeper. The ME80 system looks at the actual mechanics of your energy. It asks, how do you process information? How do you actually make decisions? It's essentially an architectural blueprint of how you function.
And the blueprint we are unrolling today is a fascinating one. It's the AFFN, also known in the system as the Crisis Foreseer.
The Crisis Foreseer. I mean, even the name sounds like it belongs in a sci-fi movie.
It totally does. And our mission for this deep dive is to decode this completely. We are going to walk through their identity, their internal control mechanisms, this really fascinating energy matrix they have, and finally, where they actually fit in the business world.
Let's do it.
So let's start with the identity. When we say Crisis Foreseer, who are we actually talking about?
At their very core, the Crisis Foreseer is defined by a really specific internal declaration. That declaration is, I see the danger before it forms.
Wow.
Yeah. Their identity isn't about being negative, which is what people assume. It's about being forward-looking and just incredibly sensitive to risk and imbalance.
You mentioned negative there, and I feel like we need to clear that up immediately because that has to be the biggest stigma they face, right?
Oh, absolutely. It is the #1 misunderstanding. If you are listening to this right now and you are a crisis foreseer, or maybe you work with one, you need to hear this. They are not pessimists.
Right, there's a difference.
A huge difference. A pessimist thinks things will go wrong because they just have a bad attitude. A crisis foreseer calculates that things will go wrong because they have spotted a real structural anomaly.
So it's not an emotional response, it's actually data.
It's pure data processing. Think of a pilot's weather radar on an airplane. If the radar shows a massive thunderstorm 50 miles ahead, is the radar being negative?
No, of course not.
Is the radar a hater? No. It's just reporting the trajectory. That is the crisis foreseer. They are constantly scanning their environment for anomalous signals.
Anomalous signals, I really love that phrasing. So while I'm looking at the shiny new paint on a car, they're the ones noticing the one single lug nut that's slightly loose.
Precisely. And this leads directly into what the ME80 system calls their control mechanism. This is their philosophy on how to navigate the world. For the crisis foreseer, their entire worldview is built around one profound insight.
Which is?
That the truly dangerous moment isn't the explosion itself.
Wait, unpack that for a second. Because the explosion seems pretty dangerous to me.
Well, sure, it's dangerous, but by the time the explosion happens, it's too late. The damage is already done. You've lost control.
Oh, I see.
For the crisis foreseer, the dangerous moment is actually the overlooked initial stage. It's that split second where a decision is made that deviates just slightly from the safe path.
So their strategy for control is basically to catch the loose thread before the whole sweater unravels.
Exactly that. Their overarching goal is to restore order before chaos even has a chance to take form. They want to contain losses within a minimal range.
Which makes sense.
It does, but here's the catch. They offer these warnings when the sun is still shining, when everything looks completely fine to the naked eye, and that is exactly why people get so annoyed with them.
Because they are trying to fix a problem that literally hasn't happened yet.
Right, and people are just trying to enjoy the sunshine.
That is such a tough sell in a business culture that just loves blind optimism. But let's look at how they actually do this. Because the ME80 system breaks this down into an energy matrix, right?
Yes, the energy matrix. This is the engine under the hood. The ME80 system uses 4 specific layers to explain how we process reality. There's the IP, IQ, EQ, and manifestation layers.
And for the crisis foreseer, this matrix is tuned specifically for what?
It's tuned for risk perception and forward warning. The whole system is geared toward that.
Let's go layer by layer. First up is the IP layer, which is the inner value layer.
Think of this as their internal compass. For the AFFN, the IT layer is defined as direction sense activated.
What does that actually mean, though? Direction sense.
It means their internal compass is permanently set to the future. They aren't looking at where we are standing right now. They are looking at the vector, the trajectory.
Give me an example of that in the real world.
Okay, so if you tell a crisis foreseer, hey, sales are really great today, they don't really care.
They don't.
No, because in their head, they are already calculating, based on current market trends, where will sales be in 6 months or a year.
Oh, wow. So they are living on the timeline, not just a single point in time.
Exactly. Every single piece of information they receive is instantly projected forward. So if you suggest taking a shortcut on a project, their IP layer immediately projects that shortcut into the future and sees the collapse it's going to cause.
Which naturally triggers the next layer, the IQ layer. Now, in the ME80 system, IQ isn't just book smarts, right? It's the emotional activation layer.
Correct. It's really about processing speed and method. For the crisis foreseer, the IQ layer is defined as intuition and speed judgment.
Speed?
Yeah.
That's surprising. I usually think of risk assessment as this really slow, deliberate, bureaucratic process.
And that is a huge misconception. This isn't a guy with a calculator taking 3 weeks to run a spreadsheet. This is highly intuitive pattern matching, and it is lightning fast.
Instantaneous?
Pretty much. They see the anomaly, the loose screw, or maybe just a weird tone in an email, and the IQ layer instantly runs the simulation. Flash, red light, danger.
So it feels like a gut check.
It feels exactly like a gut check, but it's actually high-speed intellectual processing. They've subconsciously matched the current pattern against thousands of past failures and predicted the outcome in milliseconds.
That is wild.
It happens faster than they can even articulate why they are worried. They just know it's wrong.
Okay, so they have the warning signal flashing from the IQ layer. Now what? They have to decide what to actually do with that information. And that brings us to the EQ layer.
Yes, the decision calculation layer. Now, in pop psychology, we usually think of EQ as empathy or being good with people.
Right, reading the room.
But for the crisis foreseer in this system, the EQ layer acts as a filter for risk assessment. They have to calculate the intervention.
That sounds incredibly stressful.
Oh, it's agonizing. They are sitting there thinking, okay, I see a problem. If I speak up and stop the meeting, I'm the bad guy. Everyone hates me. But if I don't speak up, the whole project crashes in 3 months.
A total lose-lose situation in their head.
Exactly. So the emotional expression here is actually the release of anxiety through that calculation. The internal tension just builds up like pressure in a steam pipe until they finally make a decision to act.
And when they finally do act, we hit the fourth and final layer,
Yeah.
the manifestation layer.
Right. Energy released outward. For this specific profile, manifestation is the warning itself. It is the physical act of stopping the assembly line, raising their hand in the boardroom, or writing that flagged memo.
They just have to get it out.
They are physically incapable of sitting still if their internal radar is jamming. That energy absolutely must be released as a real-world intervention.
So the whole system, all 4 layers, is essentially designed to detect, process, calculate, and then warn.
Perfectly put. It's a complete closed loop of protection.
Let's dig a little deeper into their inner traits, because there was a phrase in the source material that I found really evocative. It said their thinking is always half a step ahead of the scene.
Yes, that is the pure essence of forward warning. Imagine watching a movie where the audio is just slightly out of sync.
Oh, that's the worst.
Right, but imagine you hear the screeching tires and the car crash a full second before you actually see it happen on screen. The crisis foreseer lives in that state constantly.
That is a great analogy.
They are mentally processing the negative consequences of an action while the action itself is still happening in real time.
Honestly, that sounds exhausting, just living like that every day.
It really is. It's what we call simulation mode.
Yeah.
They're constantly running multiple scenario simulations in their head. Like, if we hire this person, they might clash with the senior manager, which leads to high turnover, which eventually kills the Q3 deliverables.
And they do all that math while just shaking the candidate's hand in the interview.
Exactly. It's automatic.
And I imagine this completely changes their definition of responsibility, doesn't it?
Completely. For most people, responsibility just means, hey, if I make a mess, I'll clean it up.
Sure, accountability.
Right. But for the crisis foreseer, having to clean up a mess means you already failed. For them, true responsibility is prevention, period.
They want to stop the mess from ever existing.
Yes. They constantly cross-check details to keep the system on a safe track. They are often seen as guardians of the status quo. But not because they hate change. It's because they want the organization to actually survive the change.
But every superpower has a kryptonite. And in the ME80 system, this is called the shadow blind spot.
Oh.
What happens when this highly tuned radar works too well?
The shadow for the AFFN is overvigilance. The source material describes it with this brilliant phrase, not yet broken, already slowed down.
Oof. Not yet broken, already slowed down. That is a powerful image.
It's the ultimate paradox of their existence. Because they operate in this constant, non-stop warning mode, they carry massive amounts of psychological stress.
No.
They literally see too many risks.
Like a smoke detector that goes off every time you try to make toast.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
And what happens when your smoke detector goes off every time you make toast?
You take the battery out, people stop listening.
Exactly. People tune them out. Or worse, the crisis foreseer themselves becomes completely paralyzed.
Because everything looks dangerous.
Right. Over-focusing on bad outcomes can compress their flexibility. They might hesitate to make any move at all because every single move has a calculated risk attached to it. They can inadvertently clog up the entire workflow by trying to protect it too much.
That makes a lot of sense. And socially, this dynamic must be really difficult for them. The ME80 report calls them the clear minority.
They are the lonely truth tellers. Think about it. In a group setting, human beings naturally gravitate toward consensus.
Yeah, we want to go with the flow.
We want to say yes. We want to be part of the tribe and feel the good energy. But the crisis foreseer is structurally built to oppose consensus if that consensus is deemed dangerous.
So everyone in the room is chanting, let's go, let's go. And they're the only ones standing there saying, stop.
Exactly. And because of that, to people who don't know them well, they are heavily misinterpreted. They're seen as atmosphere dampeners, wet blankets, contrarians who just want to ruin the fun.
But what about to the people who do know them?
Oh, to those who understand them, they are completely indispensable. They are the ultimate safety net.
The person you want around when things get real.
Definitely. When a crisis foreseer finally raises their hand and says, guys, we have a problem, smart leaders stop everything. Because they know that person isn't speaking out of emotion or trying to get attention. They are speaking out of a genuinely detected structural flaw.
So if you're a business leader listening to this deep dive right now, you really need to understand the commercial value of this personality type. You clearly don't hire them to be the hype man.
No, absolutely not. You hire them for risk management and structural inspection. That is their core commercial value. Their competitive advantage is discovering hidden systemic dangers before they have a chance to expand.
The source material uses the term cooling agent for them, and I thought that was just brilliant.
It's a perfect metaphor. In a high-growth company, things get hot, decisions are being made super fast, emotions run incredibly high, systems get overheated.
The classic startup hustle.
Right, and the crisis foreseer acts as the cooling agent. They bring the temperature of the room down to a safe, manageable operating level.
They prevent the organization from taking those really costly, overly enthusiastic detours.
Think about how much capital is burned in startups on projects that fail because of completely obvious flaws that were just ignored in the excitement. The crisis foreseer is the antidote to that waste.
So let's talk about career paths for a minute. If I'm listening to this and realizing, oh my gosh, this is me, I'm an AFFN, where should I be working? The report lists some very specific recommended fields.
The first one is probably obvious: risk management and review. This is their natural habitat. Locating logical gaps in complex processes. You give them a business plan and say, hey, break this.
And they love that.
They will be happier than they've ever been. It completely satisfies that deep urge to scan for anomalies.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
And another one listed is strategy planning, which is interesting because people usually think strategy is just for the big, optimistic dreamers.
They do, but you desperately need the crisis foreseer in strategy to provide the pressure test for those long-term decisions. The dreamers design the bridge, but the crisis foreseer ensures the bridge can actually hold the weight of the trucks you want to drive over it.
System design is another recommended field.
Yes, building high-resilience systems. Because they constantly anticipate failure, they naturally build systems that don't fail easily. They design safety mechanisms and redundancies right into the foundation.
And the last one, which I think is really fascinating, is high-risk decision support.
Serving as a lightning rod for decision makers. If you are a CEO making a bet the company kind of move, or a military general or a lead surgeon, you absolutely want a crisis foreseer by your side.
Because they ground you.
They do. They ensure you aren't flying blind into a storm. They are the ultimate co-pilot for high-stakes environments.
So really, any field where saying oops is just not an acceptable answer?
Correct. Nuclear safety, financial compliance, cybersecurity, advanced engineering. These are the places where the crisis foreseer truly shines and feels valued.
We've covered a lot of ground here today. We've looked at their internal wiring, the heavy burden they carry, and the incredible value they bring to a team. As we wrap this up, what is the big takeaway? How should we, whether we are the crisis foreseer or we just manage one, how do we reframe this personality?
I think we have to stop seeing their warnings as obstruction. That is the fundamental shift. When the crisis foreseer speaks up and delays a project, they aren't trying to stop the car. They're trying to keep the car on the road.
It's an act of service, really.
It's the ultimate act of care. When their warnings are actually understood as protection rather than pessimism, they allow entire systems, families, companies, teams to avoid total collapse. They grant us the luxury of stability.
We get to sleep soundly because we know they checked all the locks.
Exactly.
There was a beautiful quote in the Max Energy report that I think sums this entire deep dive up perfectly. I really want to leave our listeners with this thought.
Real safety has never been luck, it's someone seeing early.
That hits hard. We so often attribute our safety to just pure luck. Like, wow, lucky that didn't break, or lucky we caught that in time. But usually it wasn't luck at all.
No, it was a crisis foreseer quietly watching the radar while everyone else was partying.
So the next time that negative friend points out a massive flaw in your vacation itinerary or your new business plan, maybe don't roll your eyes at them. Maybe just say, thank you for seeing that.
And if you are the one constantly seeing the flaws, please keep watching. We really do need you.
This deep dive into the crisis foreseer profile comes from the Max Energy ME80 personality assessment. It's an incredible system because, as we've seen, it goes so much deeper than just basic traits. It gets into the actual energy mechanics of how we function.
It really helps you understand the deep why behind human behavior.
If you want to understand your own profile, or maybe figure out the people around you, you can find the full report and a lot more info at their official website. That's www.maxenergylife.com.
You can also search on Facebook for Max Energy Out or Met Energy Anchi. There are some really great communities and resources in those groups.
Highly recommend checking that out. It might just help you spot your own next crisis before it happens. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive, and we'll catch you next time.
Stay safe out there.